If I can sum up today's video in one single word, it is meltdown. Because that is personally what I think Matt Mullenweg, the co-founder of WordPress, the open source project that runs about 40% or so of all websites out there, by any measure, the plurality of all websites out there. And he is also the head of the WordPress Foundation that oversees the project, as well as the head of Automattic, which owns WordPress.com, Tumblr, WooCommerce, and a few other properties, because he has been going off the rails in this whole WP Engine versus WordPress debacle. And I had every intention of not making another WordPress video. I came down here to talk about privacy phones originally, and the snake oil and a lot of those projects, the merits, the ideas, things like that. But that's going to have to hold off for another day, because this drama train in the tech world just does not stop chugging. And right now, this is the most talked about situation if you are all over the internet and you are involved in technology. Before we dive in, make sure to hit like on this video, subscribe to my channel to see more of my content, and check out all of the links below in the description for all of my other social media. So for those of you that are not up and up with the petty drama that has happened thus far, you can go see my previous video talking about this. But for those of you that just want the highlights, basically what had happened was at WordCamp US, a WordPress conference, Matt Mullenweg was set to give the keynote. During his keynote, he singled out WP Engine and Silver Lake Technology, the firm that happened to own WP Engine, as not contributing enough to WordPress. And that's fine and dandy. That is a fair enough criticism. However, the issue then centers around the choice words that they had, especially in a follow-up blog post where they called them a, quote, cancer to WordPress, end quote. And that then caused, WP Engine / Silver Lake to send a cease and desist to remove these words. Matt Mullenweg / Automattic / WordPress, it's a mix because it's basically just Matt running all these things, then sent a cease and desist for the trademarks that were being used regarding WordPress. After that kind of situation was also revealed that Matt Mullenweg was demanding that WP Engine give 8% of their revenue either in employee contributions of time, which would then give Automattic the ability to audit the timestamps, time cards, and all of that. They're a really tremendous overreach. Or they could give 8% of their net revenue to Automattic, and it was just this big mess that basically happened. And when WP Engine didn't want to agree to these terms, were then shut off from WordPress.org, which is where the developer community is that actually houses all these plugins and everything there. Now, after this situation, as I talked about in my last video, WP Engine then adds some disclaimers at the bottom of their webpage, disclosing that they're not using the trademarks, they're just using the WordPress and WooCommerce names, because that's the name of the product. But then also WordPress.org had a checkbox when you go to log into WordPress.org saying that you are not affiliated with WP Engine in any way, shape, or form. That's the high level of it. To get into the nitty-gritty of everything, you can go check out my prior video. I also forgot to mention in the highlights, 159 employees of Automattic also left the company, citing this drama. They were given a buyout package, which admittedly was pretty generous, but the fact that you had enough people that wanted to leave, 8.4% of your workforce, kind of is telling that people don't want to deal with this. But with that being said, now that you're caught up, let's talk about the current situation of the current drama in this whole, I can't describe it as anything else, of a meltdown from Matt Mullenweg. Also, I want to get this out there from the outset. This is a situation where I see both parties are in the wrong in different ways, but I have to say that WordPress.org / Automattic / Matt Mullenweg are more in the wrong in this situation. I'm not saying I like WP Engine, but I'm saying that this whole thing, the way it's being gone about, is not appropriate. And I do have to agree with the headline that we'll be discussing about in another blog post from DHH. Automattic is doing open source dirty. We'll get into that in a little bit. So the first update we have to discuss about this entire story here that just seems extremely petty to me and didn't really have any foresight, because I'm not even sure he verified with his lawyers if this was a good thing to do in the first place, was WordPress.org, which again, headed by Matt Mullenweg, is a community repository of many different plugins for the WordPress project, whether you are hosting it yourself or you are using a hosted provider. This is where I and many other people that have a WordPress instance happen to go to for our plugins. Well, there's a popular plugin from WP Engine that is called Advanced Custom Fields, ACF. And they not only just forked it, they forcibly took over the entire project and created a new project called Secure Custom Fields, so all the users just shifted over to that. Now, WordPress is claiming that they are invoking 0.18 of the plugin directory guidelines, which basically allows the WordPress team several rights, including removing a plugin or changing it without developer consent. And they said similar situations have happened before, but not at this scale. This is a rare and unusual situation brought on by WP Engine's legal attacks. We do not anticipate this happening for other plugins. So you're citing the legal dispute and situation going on here, and the WP Engine dispute in part is talking about abuses of power. And you're using your power to take over a plugin that I don't think he really actually conversed with his lawyers and said, is this something I can do or should do? And didn't consider the optics of this entire situation. Because it does look like he is in fact doing open source dirty, as we will be talking about in a second. Now, WP Engine's ACF team claimed on X that WordPress has never, quote, unilaterally and forcibly taken a plugin from its creator without consent. This is really not a good look for WordPress. Now we have another update as well. So the next update that we're going to be talking about has to do with a post that David Heinemeier Hansson, I hope I said that right, or more affectionately known in the tech community as DHH. He is a man that has a lot of different accolades to his name: creator of Ruby on Rails, co-owner of 37 Signals, he's got Basecamp, he's got a lot of things underneath his portfolio nonetheless. So he wrote this entire post called Automattic is Doing Open Source Dirty. So in DHH's post of Automattic is Doing Open Source Dirty, he talks about a few things here that I've talked about prior, such as open source, that while, yes, you know, the WP Engine should be doing more to contribute to open source, demanding 8% of WP Engine's revenues isn't right, and he goes into points about the open source licensing and things like that, other things I've touched about in my prior videos as well. And again, I think WP Engine should contribute more to the open source project. I'm not disputing that. My issue is the ways that he's going about basically trying to blackmail them into contributing more to open source. That's an issue right here, and just kind of does the entire idea of open source dirty. And I do have to agree with DHH's assessment here. So there's a few paragraphs from DHH's post that I do want to speak about because they stand out in particular for my mind, and it has to do with the opening paragraph as well as 3 paragraphs further down. Automattic demanding 8% of WP Engine's revenues because they're not, quote, giving back enough, end quote, to WordPress is a wanton violation of general open source ideals and the specifics of the GPL license. Automattic is completely out of line, and the potential damage to the open source world extends far beyond the WordPress. Don't let the drama or its characters distract you from that threat. And that is one of the things I've been driving home a little bit, although I focused more so on how it was going to split the WordPress community. But he is right. It is basically going to put a sour taste in the mouths of a lot of people about open source. There's more to the overall blog, which again, you can read down in the description. I'll make sure to link it, but these are also some good points to bring up. It's even more outrageous that Automattic has chosen trademarks as their method to get their, quote, Al Capone, end quote, when up until 2018, they were part owners of WP Engine before selling their stake to Silver Lake. I didn't know that piece of information. Continuing on. And yet, I can see where this is coming from. Ruby on Rails, the open source web framework I created, has been used to create businesses worth hundreds of billions of dollars combined. Some of those businesses express their gratitude and self-interest by supporting the framework with dedicated developers, membership of the Rails Foundation, or conference sponsorship. But many also do not, and that is absolutely their right, even it occasionally irks a little. That's the deal. That's open source. I give you a gift of code, you accept the terms of the license. There cannot be a second set of shadow obligations that might suddenly apply if you strike it rich using the software. Then the license is meaningless, the clarity all muddled and certainly lost. Look, Automattic can change their license away from the GPL anytime they wish. The new license will only apply to new code, though, and WP Engine or anyone else are eligible to fork the project. That's what happened with Redis after Redis Labs dropped their BSD license and went with a commercial open source available alternative. Valkey was forked from the last free Redis version, and now that's where anyone interested in an open source Redis implementation is likely to go. And DHH is basically summing up what I've said before in prior videos. Linux for itself is open source. It's also used in a lot of proprietary projects. I'm sure Linus Torvalds himself, the creator of Linux, is maybe not the happiest with where it's always implemented, but he's probably going to shrug and say, that's open source. I may not like it, but it's open source. And that's where I think DHH is taking the approach there. And I think the end of his blog post sums it up best, but I suspect Automattic wants to have their cake and eat it too. They want to retain WordPress' shine of open source, but also be able to extract their pound of flesh from any competitor that might appear whenever they see fit. Screw that. Now, Matt Mullenweg, this is where it's starting to feel like Meltdown is coming into play, because he's starting to look like the bad guy from a lot of the other open source people, and in his own community of WordPress. Let's take a break here for a second, and let's talk about how you all can level up your coding skills with. CodeCrafters is an amazing platform for you to hone and improve your software development skills, allowing you to have challenges in all sorts of programming languages to build your own Redis server, build your own HTTP server, build your own interpreter, or, even build your own Git. You can basically remake a lot of popular projects out there, running all sorts of languages. Just looking at this list here, they have Rust, Go, Python, C, C#, C++, Clojure, Crystal, Dart, Elixir, and the list goes on from there. So check out CodeCrafters today in the link below and go and hone your software development skills. I know I'm going to be tinkering with them myself quite a bit. I also forgot to mention that DHH has another blog post that he had about this entire situation, open source royalty and Mad Kings. Not going to get into that as much, but you can go read that. I will make sure to link down below for all of you to read it. Talks about, the benevolent dictator for life model of open source stewardship, talking about how projects like Linux and Python, Laravel, and Ruby all operate in different ways with good stewardship, into contrast with how Matt Mullenweg is operating his. And this is what eventually leads to, in my opinion, feels like Matt Mullenweg is really having a meltdown with his latest response in his blog about this whole situation. Matt's post is just simply called Response to DHH. And, starts off with, I'll just remind everyone at the start that this is a respectful debate, and DHH and I tried to get on a call, but we couldn't because we were both traveling. Although it's interesting he says respectful, but then goes on to say, DHH claims to be an expert on open source, but his toxic personality and inability to scale teams means that although he has invented about $500 billion worth of good ideas, most of the value has been captured by others. I want to hone in on that sentence, basically there for a second. He has invented about $500 billion worth of good ideas. Most of the value has been captured by others. That's kind of what this is feeling like, is that Matt's feeling like he's not making enough off of his ideas and other people are making money off of his projects, which was one of the things that DHH has discussed in his article. Then he kind of goes into this diatribe on different things, like, hey, proprietary, some sort of email calendar blogging thing that almost no one uses. It's trying to be Gmail/Workspace and Medium at the same time, and you can arbitrarily cut off anyone publishing with, hey, they have no open source rights. I mean, that's kind of the idea if you run your own things. Campfire, proprietary, you invented Slack, but they took the idea and built a $900 million AAR business with it, while you were trying to make shrink-wrap licensing a thing with once. Writebook, proprietary, pretty cool. Basecamp, proprietary, great software. You invented the ideas Atlassian ran with and built a $4.4 billion revenue and growing business. Rails, finally, some open source. Looks like about 943K lines of code, 143K from Basecamp.org. Automatically publishes 6.58 million lines of open source code, 6.9 times more than you, yet we're doing open source dirty. I think he's completely missing the mark here, because now you're getting pedantic where you're like, this amount of code and that amount of code. It's the idea behind it. He has an open source project. Some of his other projects are proprietary, but like DHH said, it feels like they want to have their cake and eat it too. This really is starting to feel like a meltdown from Matt, where he doesn't know really how to properly process the idea that there are proprietary projects and there's open source projects. And if you're going to be an open source project, you can't go around demanding revenue from other companies just because they're not contributing enough to your project. That's open source. It sucks sometimes, like DHH said in his, article. It irks sometimes, but that's open source. It's the same thing as Linus Torvalds. I'm pretty sure, he's happy with people using his software. He is, writing code for his life under the Linux Foundation. Of course, he's not making Bill Gates kind of money, but I think he's happy with the position that he's in with the open source software that he has built, that millions of people are using around the world, and I'm even gaming on and everything like that. That's the nature of open source. You're not going to necessarily get rich off of, making it all the time. You may do pretty well hosting projects and, using open source in other ways. But like DHH was saying, I feel like this is a want their cake and eat it too kind of situation. Matt even devolves into a trademark discussion. Quote, let's talk about trademarks. I don't own the WordPress trademark personally. It belongs to a foundation of which I'm one of 3 votes. Rails, and then he goes into, Rails, Ruby on Rails, and the Rails logo are registered trademarks of David Heinemeier Hansson, but are under exclusive license to the Rails Foundation, which is responsible for administering their use and permission. You may not use trademarks in a commercial setting to imply that your product or service is endorsed or associated with Ruby on Rails without permission. You may use these marks to refer to Ruby on Rails in a way where it's clear that you're simply referring to the project, not claiming endorsement or association. And then he goes in basically this whole thing about how come you can use trademarks and I can't and all that. It's an apple and oranges situation. WP Engine didn't seem to be claiming when they said bringing WordPress to the masses as saying it was the WordPress Foundation, but rather the project, because they have websites that happen to be accessing millions of people. Look at their customer base. Tiffany & Company, AMD, Stanford University, Petco. They are bringing it to the masses. That is the reality. And as it were, if this discussion hadn't already run off the rails already, pun not intended, but I will fully accept it, you are ignoring WP Engine's trademark abuse while retaining the same for your Rails trademark. No one's discussing the issue of having a trademark. What is at issue is your use of the trademark in this whole drama here, because predominantly you're using the trademark as a cudgel against a company that you're not agreeing in your mind, and I would say in many other people's mind, isn't contributing enough work to WordPress, but the way you're going about enticing them, incentivizing them to contribute more to the project is wrong. When you were at WordCamp US, you were basically saying, well, they had only contributed 40 some odd hours, and then it comes to be revealed, you demanded 8% of the company's net revenue, either monetarily or through employee labor, that you then could audit the time cards and everything of, because you felt they weren't contributing enough to the work. And DHH basically said, well, that's kind of the nature of open source. Yeah, some people aren't going to contribute enough in my mind. It irks me, but that's open source. And in your own thing, it feels like you're upset that not enough people are contributing, because you even said most of the value has been captured by others earlier on in the post, where you literally were saying he has invented about $500 billion of worth of good ideas. Most of the value has been captured by others. And I think that is the core premise here, is I feel like Matt feels like he's not getting enough credit or value out of all the work that he's doing. Look, you've done thousands of hours of code. Yes, you can talk about the million lines of code you had, but that's not at what is mainly at issue here. It's given the position of where you're at as the head of this project, the co-founder, the head of the foundation, head of Automattic and everything, what you are doing to one of your competitors, because you are running WordPress.com, which is a competitor to WP Engine. This doesn't seem right delight to a lot of people. And to cement down where it feels like you're going down a meltdown, you start going after David, basically saying perhaps instead of spending $2 million on a race car, you should do some philanthropy. I'm not really sure where this plays in the whole thing. Interestingly enough, you said, I'll just remind everyone at the start of this that this is a respectful debate. That doesn't seem like part of a respectful debate. That seems like something I would expect at the recent presidential debates in the United States, and just the level of how out of place this felt. I don't, it really honestly feels to me like Matt has some personal issues he needs to work through. I'm gonna say this, you've done an amazing job getting WordPress to the point that it is. I mean, you have a project that has 40-some-odd% of all websites. You've built a company that has a $7.5 billion worth with Automattic. You've done more than many people could hope to do in their entire lifetime. I'm not discrediting that, but where I think is that right now, I think you've been in the bubble for too long. You have some issues going on. I don't know what they are, but maybe you should pull, you know, like what Tom Anderson, I think it was, of MySpace. Maybe it's time for you to step back, travel the world, and give the reins to someone else, because I think this is too much about you at this point in time, and not about the community, not about open source, not about the fallout that this is causing for a lot of the people, because a lot of my friends right now are telling me they're not even fielding, people that are clients that come to them saying they want WooCommerce. Their clients that are already on WooCommerce are asking them to move to Shopify, in part because of this drama. No one is coming to developers basically saying we want to do WordPress or that. A lot of them are saying we want to do something else other than WordPress because of this drama and everything. In the long term here, this is going to hurt not just WordPress, but open source as a whole. I really hope that you work on the issues that you're having right now, because this is not going to be good for WordPress. This is not going to be good for all the works and the companies that you've built, the foundation and everything. I think what DHH said is that, you know, people may start forking it if you decide to go down that route, which is you're right. But I think people are already starting to get really irritated with this, and the news of this whole situation is starting to leak out into the mainstream. It's no longer tech niche specific news. It's bleeding out, because with what you did after going after WP Engine affected a lot of different businesses that they were hosting. You didn't consider all the people that could get caught in the crossfire, all these businesses. And I know some of you are allowed to like, oh, boo-hoo, the businesses, ah! I get it. But think of all the developers that have to handle these businesses. A lot of these people are freelancers. A lot of these people have day jobs. And now you're adding an extra load of stress to their day job of what they had to do with this entire situation. I really hope that you get the help that you need, Matt, because it's feeling more like a meltdown, and you've personally involved yourself too much in this project, and I think you need to step back. And not to take this on a personal note, some people have noted that there's a very lack of personal life with yourself. I think you need to focus on doing things in your life that can make you happy and find some happiness, because going about this right now isn't going to bring about a good thing for the community and thus yourself. And you're already starting to get a stain on your name and a stain on WordPress's name. So with that being said, I hope you wish you all the best. Stay safe out there, everyone. Happy hacking.